And now we'll be moving on to our advocacy panel. So we'll be hearing from some amazing youth activists that will shed some knowledge. But before we kind of dive into that, let's introduce the amazing Koji Lewis, which will be our facilitator for today. For those of you who don't know, Koji is the COVID-19 event and outreach coordinator at the ECHO team at Little Manila Rising, and is just like overall someone that really works hard to just create and provide health resources for COVID-19 to our South Stockton community. So a lot of love to him. Completely honored to have him to facilitate for today. So I'll pass over the entire stage to him to facilitate our entire panel.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chow Ann. So it's really great to be here, but I really want to highlight three awesome youth advocates that want to talk to you all today a little bit about their experiences at Little Manila Rising. So we have Leilani, Rain, and Carlane who would love to talk to you. So I'll pass it over to Leilani to introduce herself.
Hey y'all, my name is Leila Limandupano. I have my background is in linguistics. I have a master's in linguistics and I currently work in industry. I've been involved with Little Manila Rising for about 8 to 9 months now.
Hi everyone, my name is Rain Romeo and my pronouns are she, hers. And I have recently graduated from Edison High School. So I am now first year attending Delta College and I will be majoring in social work. And I have been with Little Manila for about 3 years through their after school program and 2 of their advocate cohorts that they mentioned earlier in the beginning of this conference, which is immigration rights and protections and environmental justice. So excited to be here, everyone.
Hi everyone, my name is Carlene. I'm a second year at UC Berkeley studying both civil and environmental engineering and environmental economics and policy. I've been involved with Little Manila since my junior year of high school, so it's been quite some time. I can't start my video. I'm so sorry. But I was an LMASP student. I was an advocate in census, environmental justice, and I am now in DON. I'm excited to meet y'all today.
Awesome. Thank you, Leilali, Rain, and Carlane for sharing a little bit about yourselves. And we're just gonna jump right into it. We have a few questions prepared for our youth advocates to answer. But if there's any questions y'all like to ask them, feel free to type it in the chat and we'll we have a dedicated space to answer audience questions. So getting right into it, some of us would probably love to know, how has a youth advocate shifted your ideology on community work and working directly with Stockton residents?
Thank you, Koji. I can start us off. So I have witnessed how community action is transformative. Especially during the start of COVID, I served as an advocate for immigration rights and protections, and that was the first advocate program I joined to. So it's an amazing experience that has helped me explore my interest in helping others and my interest in wanting to pursue social work. But due to COVID, my cohort and I had to somehow bridge a connection with the community while adhering to COVID safety guidelines such as social distancing. And that is something that we are still facing up to present day. But being in this program, I also had to learn how to shift to outreaching, forming connections, and creating accessible resources via online, such as virtual workshops, and utilizing Little Manila's social media, such as at LM Advocates. And through this process, I've noticed how a community can adapt, learn, and grow together regardless of the potential limitations placed upon us. And it really shows the strength of a community and how the support of its community members can go a long way.
I can continue. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry that my the sun is in my way. But I was really blessed to be part of 3 advocate cohorts so far. So in census, that's when COVID started. So at the beginning, we got to be able to learn how to canvass outreach with people and talk to a bunch of community orgs that are around the San Joaquin Valley. There's a sick org that I was really learn outreach and stuff. And then once COVID started, we had to kind of facilitate in a virtual setting. So I was blessed to learn how to organize workshops in a virtual setting and kind of do some online and remote work with that. And other than that, we also learned how to kind of organize and advocate for ourselves from the pros themselves. So me and Auding Rain, we went to LA to kind of talk about mental health, and that was a really inspiring moment for me.
As for me, I think what working with Stockton again and all that stuff has really cemented, well, not some reaffirmed the idea that kind of everyone has been mentioned in their answers of putting your ideology, so to speak, into practice, in the sense that not, even though we may use the words like community care and stuff, and some people aren't familiar with those words, it doesn't mean that they don't practice it. It doesn't mean that your own family doesn't practice it. And so being in the community again and seeing things happening in action, and you kind of start to realize that everyone, especially communities here in Stockton, have their own way of doing that. And so being able to do that again, since I left Stockton briefly for university, I came back. Being able to be in the community again, especially with everything that's happened with COVID, has been really nice. And again, really reaffirming that, putting all these thoughts that we have about what our community should be and what it should look like, putting it into practice by being out there with Stockton residents as well.
Yeah, thanks for your responses. I can see a common theme of COVID kind of really affecting all of us in different ways, and those in the audience as well. But it's really inspiring to hear that even in this time right now, you still find ways to connect to community. So that's truly heartwarming to hear. I have another question for y'all. With learning new things as a youth advocate, always comes new challenges and new experiences. Is there anything you've realized about yourself through doing this community work?
So I'm gonna go. So as for the community work that I've been doing, it really kind of put me into the space where I was continuing the work of my ancestors and trying to outreach and engage with the people among me. I know that my mom and and her grandparents were shipped from the Philippines to Hawaii as cicadas, and they were farm workers and they worked in the fields. And then they came back and they did their own thing and stuff. And I'm continuing my own work of going to school and trying to live like my ancestors' dreams of becoming my own woman and becoming a boss and becoming a good student and being a woman of that I want to be. I want to be able to be successful. So when I have kids one day and my mom becomes a grandma and my grandma becomes a great grandma, we have this long line of strong Filipinas out there. And yeah, I just want to continue that for the rest of my life.
Kind of actually continue what Colleen was saying, very similarly, where this type of work in general, like I kind of said earlier too, is the work of generations, right? And in terms of it applying to me more specifically, kind of what I said earlier, looking back at our family, looking at how community care is shaped in our family, right? A more specific example would be my dad had very little family members here when he immigrated to the US. And so for him, his way of kind of helping his own, like his friends and his community, is kind of helping people find jobs here when they arrive to the US. My mom does this kind of the same thing where if she knows people who need clothes, she'll help them find clothes, right? She knows people who maybe need to learn English, she'll point them in the right direction and other things like that. And those, I think, seeing that the type of work I'm interested in doing and want to do and contribute to Stockton, just because I'm new and I was a student and like, you know, all that stuff doesn't mean that it wasn't happening before in my family. And I think, and like I said earlier, like we have words like community care and stuff, but for my parents, they don't use those words, for example, because they don't know them, but it doesn't mean they're not doing it. And I think that care and resilience in it, just that it's always happened and will continue to happen after me, is really reaffirming in the work that we're doing and the work that I've seen done.
And I'd also like to jump to the point as well, or rather add to Leilani and Carlene's point of continuing the work of our ancestors. It is very important to keep in mind that the work you do doesn't only affect yourself, but others. We learn from each other and we learn from history. So it's very important to keep in mind the purpose and intent behind your actions. Reconsider, who are you doing this for and who is it going to affect? The power of history and self is knowledge and strength. Use it. Use it. And some background context, I am Filipino American. I was born in Parañaque, Philippines, which is in Manila, but my family and I migrated to the United States, specifically Stockton, California, when I was 3 months old. So I was basically raised in Stockton, California for the majority of my life. But due to this change, I always felt disconnected to my ancestral and cultural roots. But thanks to Little Manila, I have found a community where I feel safe and can learn about my culture. So I highly resonate with Little Manila's motto, to know history, to know self. And I'm wearing some Little Manila merch right now too. And another advice I have is that I highly suggest that you all prioritize finding a safe space for yourself.
Wow, I feel like y'all blessed us with some vulnerability and your openness and your heart forward words of passion. Another common theme I'm hearing is like family, generations of community work, generations of community love and affirmation. So thank you for answering that question. I can tell y'all really took it to heart. I think, you know, being a youth advocate at Little Manila, you get to kind of carve out your own path to what you want to do for Stockton. You talked about what your family wants to do or did before you and all the small things that community does to help each other. But moving forward, I want to ask the three of you, is there anything you personally or you would like to do in Stockton or you want to see in Stockton? What kind of community engagement do you want to see for our future generations?
For me, I think a big thing I would love to see in the future is kind of the helping. It's more so almost like professional development. But what I mean by that is you hear a lot about like the brain drain that's happening in San Joaquin Valley, right? And I'm sure a lot of you have seen this or will go through it actually, of having to leave Stockton because there are no opportunities here in terms of whether that means education for college, right? Since there are no public universities here in Stockton, whether that means for career. Like a lot of the friends I grew up with and graduated from high school with, I'm the only one who lives in Stockton now, right? Because they all had to leave for college and then for the careers because they couldn't find jobs here. And that's something that a few of my cousins are actually going through right now as well, right? Because it's so difficult to find, again, just education and jobs here. And I think I would love, and people kind of end up with the mentality of like, oh, if I want to succeed and if I want to thrive in life, I have to leave Stockton. And that's true to an extent, but I would love for that to shift in the future, whether people, if they want to, because it always comes down to your own choices, right? Like being forced to leave, whether you want to or not, is not pleasant. right? Like maybe if you have the option to leave real estate, that should be the goal. It should not be you have to leave, because I came back to Stockton because I had to come back, but it's also like you get a little bitter if you have like having to face the fact that you might have to leave because you're being forced to, whether you want to or not. I think helping that shift in the future and helping people see that you can have a career and you can have a job from whether you're from Stockton or in Stockton itself is really important to me, and I would love to see that change.
Personally, for me, I'm very passionate about environmental justice and health. Like what I mentioned earlier, I was an advocate for environmental justice as well. And especially in the San Joaquin County, specifically Southside Stockton, has poor air quality. And that was even mentioned in the previous workshops that we had earlier, which I really enjoyed, by the way. And I witnessed how it's affected those close to me. For example, my older brother has asthma, and I have seen how it has affected his journey as a student athlete throughout high school. He played football, but I noticed during the games there was times that he had to temporarily go to the sidelines to use his inhaler. And just seeing how much that affected him, especially since he did love football. He doesn't really play anymore. He's more into weight training now instead, since you're kind of more stationary. It doesn't involve a lot of cardio when you weight train. And seeing that, it had motivated my call to action to promote resources such as air quality monitors and spread more awareness to the potential health hazards that can take into effect regardless if you are inside your home or outside. Especially with air pollution, it's made up of tiny particles that aren't sometimes visible to the human eye. For example, when we see the infrastructure and all like that gray smoke come out of factories, that we can see, but sometimes it's not as visible. But just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And I would just love to bring awareness to that. And I would love to direct my passion for the environment to work with more nonprofit organizations in Stockton, neighborhoods affected by redlining, and schools.
Great. So yeah, so as Ani Rain did talk about like implementing air monitors and stuff like that. For me, I'm really passionate about STEM and having our low-income immigrant families involved in STEM education. As an environmental engineer and also an economist and policy kind of person, I'm all about intertwining like the art of being an advocate, but also being an advocate for STEM communities, because there is such a low population of children in STEM that want to become engineers, that want to become data analysis, that want to, to be like in the Wall Street, being in those like big corporate companies running numbers. It's really cool to see representation where it's like a brown woman doing run numbers for a big community like NASA. And I know that being able to be a bridge for these communities, for these Filipino families, for these Kanaka families, for these communities that are in STEM, being a bridge for those that are in Stockton, it's really empowering. And I want to be able to be that girl that little kids look up to. I have lots of outings out there, but I also want to be the manang that like gives them motivation to do whatever they need to succeed.
I love that, y'all. Those responses were so personal and individual to y'all, which is so great because we have so many awesome creative minds here in Stockton. And if we all work together in different areas, whether it's like civil engineering and like buildings, or air quality and getting Stockton with more job opportunities, I think we can really like hype up Stockton and make sure that when people do look for opportunities, they don't have to look anywhere else. They can do it right here in their home city. So I want to open up the space. So thank you all so much for your responses. They were lovely to hear. I want to open up the space for anyone in the audience who had any questions or affirmations or comments. I'll feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question or say your affirmation directly to our panelists. Go for it, Anai.
Thank you, Koji. Yeah, like Koji said, your guys' answers were like very individual. And so that just like reminds me that, you know, I'm part of something bigger too. And thank you guys for sharing it. It meant a lot. And I could also relate to a lot of the things you guys were sharing. And, you know, like just remembering that we're all a team and we're in it together. And also if you guys need anything, you know, I'm here, we're here. And thank you again for sharing your experience.
Yeah, thank you, Anai. And I don't want to pronounce your name wrong, but is it Damaris or Damaris?
Either way is good. I pronounce it Damaris. But yeah, I had a question for you guys. I know you guys touched on like dealing with being an advocate for your own community and finding a space where you belong. I wanted to ask like how did you deal with like doubting yourself with your like I you know like with your identity because you don't feel like you're an actual Filipino or like I don't feel like I'm an actual Mexican sometimes or I don't feel like I'm an actual American. Like how do you like reassure yourself that what like the work that you're doing is worth it and somebody like does see you? Because like it's kind of hard for me so far, especially since I'm starting out. There's just like I don't know if it happens in the Filipino community as well, but in the Mexican American and Latino in general, in the Latino community, there's just like a lot of shame towards non-Spanish speaking people who are also Latino. So how did you guys deal with that when starting out your community work?
Can I answer?
Yeah, go
I'll
ahead.
answer after you. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so as for myself, I'm not Latinx, I'm not Mexican American, I'm Filipino. But the work that you're doing, you can start small. It doesn't need to be big at all. Just like acknowledging that you are your own person, you are Latino, like you are Mexican American, that's more than enough. And you are, just because you don't speak Spanish doesn't make you any less Mexican or any less Latinx as there any person should be. Like, I don't speak Tagalog, I speak Ilocano. That doesn't make me any less Filipino than I am. I don't speak Olelo Hawaii as good as my parents, but that doesn't make me less Kanaka as we are. Um, um, like to be able to start small and acknowledge your littlest works in yourself and invest in yourself in the best way you can, that's more than enough than any person could do that wasn't doing anything to begin with. You are doing more than what you can, and we all appreciate that, and you should be proud of yourself, regardless of like the little or as big as work you can do for yourself. I'm proud of you, all of us in LMR are proud of you, and like there's, you can start small, you can join like little community groups that are for Latinx communities. I know in like other high schools they have like a mecha, or like in college like they have something specific for Latinx groups or Hispanic groups or anything like that. You can join them and find community in them, and you can kind of be involved in that way of sense. If you want to do community work for other identities as well, like LGBT communities, you can go ahead and we can refer you to those. But yeah, just know that the littlest work is a simple step, and you're making those steps for greatness. Like you got this. Like don't believe that you are not doing anything for yourself, because you are. You asking the question is more than any person that wasn't doing anything to begin with is about. So yeah, you're good.
Yeah, adding on to that, I'm actually Mexican American, so this is a thing, and we don't realize sometimes until someone tells us this, but language trauma is very, very real. There is a reason, and I know you know what the reason is, that you don't speak Spanish. Of 99% of the time when I've met people who don't speak their home language, it's because the parents decided not to teach you for valid reasons. Sometimes your parents were hit for speaking something, a language that wasn't English, right? Or maybe they thought, oh, well, I want you to succeed, in the way to succeed is speaking English only. or sometimes our teachers are misguided. I have a linguistics background, this is why I'm like very passionate about this. Sometimes teachers are told like, hey, if you speak two languages as a kid, your kid is going to get confused, speak only English, and none of that is true. Like there's no, like your child is not going to fall behind because they speak a different language. And this is the thing that, like I said, there's a reason you don't speak Spanish. It's not something to be embarrassed about, but again, it's the societal and economic pressure, like economic, societal, cultural pressure to not speak a language beyond English, right? So there's a reason that you shouldn't be ashamed of not speaking Spanish. I'm sure you know a few words, and you have to think of it this way. You have to think, these words that I've learned, even if it's like hello, goodbye, whatever, have been passed down to me through like us, like through love, really, even if it's only a handful of words, because again, your family probably faces a ton of pressure for speaking Spanish, right? Especially if your family has been here for multiple generations. And so think of the words you do know and what you can speak as a form of love and as a form of resistance, because that's what it really is. It's resistance and it's family resilience. And that goes for anyone. Like if you speak a language that isn't English, that applies. Like knowing your home language, will it be Ilocano, Tagalog, Spanish, Hmong, whatever it is a form of resistance, and it's a form of love, and it's a form of passing on your culture as well. And I got really heated, but like this is something that like I faced before in like my own, like I used to teach English classes, so this is something I face. People like have asked me all the time, and so I just get real heated because people think like, oh, I'm not like, I don't speak my home language or I speak it bad. But even the few words you know, and if you speak it bad, like that's resistance and that's resilience showing up. So like be proud of it.
And just one more thing, since I also know we're kind of running out of time and I want to leave space for more questions, is that I'd also like to touch up again on Carlene's point of acknowledging that is already such a powerful statement. And something that I personally did, since I had that problem too, feeling isolated from myself and my community and who I am as a person. Something I personally did was that I used to channel that energy instead as a way to invest into myself. And some ways that I did that was through Little Manila's after school program, LMASP. And in there, you can express yourself in so many ways. It doesn't just have to be through language, it can be through art. So, for example, through Little Manila, I did their Little Manila Dance Collective before. You can even do it through physical art too, by painting, and even cultural attire as well. And just exploring so many options and really being adventurous, trying out new things. And I just think that's so powerful, and really invest in yourself and don't hesitate to do so. I think that's something I really struggled with, being shy to actually take action and initiative to make a change for myself. And within those hobbies that you'll find, that's how I also found my safe space, and that's how I found Little Manila. So don't hesitate to be don't hesitate to put yourself out there.
And very briefly, last thing, I swear, is that this is not to disencourage you, but anyone who's feeling this way, and you're like, let's say you're just starting out college, in a way, it only gets worse, because the more you move up in college, like if you do a post grad, if you start going into working a job, you're going to find yourself more and more in white spaces, and you're going to feel that pressure more, right? Whether you're the token hire, or whether other people are going to start accusing you of like being white or like not being your heritage, you're going to feel that pressure more. And also just because you don't see other people who have been through your experience, it's just going to grow. And like I said in the chat, but like the key is ground yourself in your family, ground yourself in people who, from your community, from your culture, from people who get what you're coming from. And that will make a world of difference, because you won't feel as alone. Trust, like I've been through this. I went through this recently. So like, trust me, I get it. It's hard. And it's a journey. It's not going to be from one day to the next. It's going to take probably your entire lifetime, right? Just because we have that pressure pretty much every time we step out of our circles. And so that's just something you got to remind yourself, like stay grounded, remember who you love, remember who loves you.
Wow. How do you follow up that? That was some powerful words that were said by our panelists, and so many affirmations and advice in the chat. So I hope that those responses answered your question. We have time for one more audience question. Does anyone have any other question or affirmation for our panelists before we move on to our last part of our conference today? Okay, I don't see any more hands raised, or I didn't hear anyone unmute. So I'm going to quickly pass it over to our panelists to leave y'all with just one last piece of general advice before we move on to our next section. And while they are leaving their advice for you all, I'm going to be dropping their contact information, such as their email or social media, so you can contact them even further. So I'll pass it to you, panelists.
I'll go first, I guess. With especially what I've been seeing in the chat, I would say it sounds to me from the people I've met in LMR and such, a lot of you are still in college, finishing college, all that stuff. And what I would really like to tell y'all is related to what I said earlier is find your community, ground yourself in your community, whether it's cultural, whether it's the friends you grew up with, because especially as so many of you have, like, I've been here and stuff, are going through college, a lot of you are first gen, a lot of you are low income. You're gonna, once you start taking your first steps, whether it's like in university and in job hunting, because job hunting is a whole different thing, trust me, you have to focus on, it's easy to lose who you are or a sense of who you are just because everything is so different once you leave Stockton, right? And once you leave your community, find people you trust. Don't lose touch with people who you grew up with people who you went to lived with in Stockton, because that would really, really ground you. And that will really help you kind of get rid of the nonsense that you kind of see out there, especially once you start moving up in the world, which is a dumb phrase, but that's the best way I can explain it. But especially once you start exploring different avenues of life, like, people are really, really dumb out there. And so what's that really helped me is, again, like, just being in touch with my family, being in touch with the friends I grew up in here in Stockton. And really, that just solves so many issues that you face later on down the road.
I can go next. So I just know that we all tend to downplay ourselves and our success, etc. So I just want to quickly say that I want you all to know that you matter. Your voice is important, and please be sure to take care of yourselves, especially since we are living in unexpected times. And it is very important to take care of yourself, because healing yourself also serves as healing the community. And I'm sending you guys all of my love.
I can go next and last. I just wanted to have you all walk away with the idea of trying to remember who you do this for and like why you do this. Asking yourself like the 5 questions, like who, what, where, when, why do you do this? Why do you do the work that you do today? And what kind of difference that you want to make, even if the difference is small or even if the difference is big. Just know that it is a difference in the first place, and you are doing more than whatever the person that's not doing anything is. So yeah, y'all are good.
And thank you, panelists and everyone, for a wonderful panel. I'll pass it over to our MCs.